Thank you. Okay, I see the recording on, so I'm going to take the presentation mode. So good morning, everyone. Super early morning for some of you, and maybe good evening. I don't think there is any good afternoon here. Thank you all for joining the webinar series. I believe this happens. This is a very active community, connecting every week. You are experts and you know the AI space very well. So today's talk is going to be a bit of a diversion, but hopefully an interesting diversion for most of you. Can you see my screen? Yes. Vivek, just to confirm? Yes. Okay. So we are going to talk about careers in technology, and more specifically, what are the areas that we need to think about as we focus on advancing our careers. And you will see this, the title as learning the why and the what are as important as the how and the when. And then, as we go through the slides, you will have a better appreciation. So this is going to be a fairly interactive session. So unlike the previous ones where, there is clearly a lot of very good technical content, I want to keep the conversations two-way or multi-way. So feel free to jump in. This is a quick background about our company. We provide recruiting solutions for AI and related talent in the tech space. My own background is life sciences in corporate consulting roles, and then the startup. And Vivek, who is the chief orchestrator of everything that this forum does, is on our advisory board, and we have operations in multiple locations. But let me now switch, and this is kind of the way I'm hoping we can make this interactive. Let's say, and it's early morning, so I'm sure you're having your cup of tea or coffee, but you just decided you want to climb Mount Everest, right? And you can see the small guy or gal here. That's you. And now you tell this to your family or friends or the near and dear ones. What would be the first set of questions you expect to get from them? I'll take three in the interest of time. So give me three, at least the first three comments from this group. Anyone? Okay. So
my family would say, why you are doing all this, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Anybody else? Okay. So as Vivek, you pointed out, naturally the first question would be why, right? And this may be out of concern if it is a family member, out of curiosity if it is somebody well, but they would want to know, why do you want to do this? There are clearly there is a fair amount of preparation time. There is some risk to your health and to your life as well, and so they would want to know the why. Now, there is a lot that would go into preparing for such a climb, right? A lot of training tools, skills. There is conditioning. I'm told that it will take you several months of living in high altitude, or maybe several weeks, probably not months. So a lot of that, but that's not the first thing. that comes to mind, right? It's the why. And then, if the why is convincing, they may get into some other aspects, right? Now, let's say, something closer to home. Let's you have a startup idea and, you want to talk about it. What are the typical questions you should expect to be asked? So, again, this one I'm opening the floor. 3 inputs, not Vivek, because you had your chance. Any inputs? Okay. Well, it's still early morning, so you might need a few more sips of your coffee. But there's going to be a natural question on what problem are you solving? Why would anyone pay for it? Even, give me a convincing argument, which is what we generally call as a value proposition. How would you do it? Now you get into kind of the nuts and bolts, right? In the Everest context, the nuts and bolts would have been the jacket, the gear, the snow boots, and oxygen and this and that, right? Here, it's naturally something very different. But keep in mind the flow of the questions to get to the how is somewhat, there is a sequence here, right? They didn't ask the how first. And then the when, can it be launched, plan, execution details. Naturally, that will tell you the resources, the funding, and so on and so forth. Now, sorry, I just jumped one slide ahead. In a typical CV that you come across, that we come across a lot of, in a typical CV, the questions that are answered, there is very little coverage on the what and the why. It gets into the who. And actually we need to know the who is the candidate. And then you would typically see a lot of the hows. And there could be some when, but it's a lot of focus on how did I do this or that, right? And actually the this or that is not trivial, but you see that you're jumping straight into, again, using the Everest analogy or using your startup analogy. The people that know you didn't want to get to the how until you convince them on the what and the why, right? And that is one of the, and it's a mindset thing. When you're presenting yourself in a CV, you are thinking about everything you have done. You look at a CV from your standpoint. But what the purpose of the CV is to convey what the reader should know, right? And that's the key difference in how a CV can be made into, more informative, more interesting, because a lot of times when we see CVs, it's the same, I'll put it the way we think about it, the same old, right? There's nothing that stands out. Yes, there are a certain set of skills, and they link with the job requirements, right? But beyond that, there is no real way to differentiate. Keep in mind, the CV is your filter, right? When you go, to use an analogy, if you were, and I'm using this just to drive home the point. If you were on a matrimonial site or some other dating site, your profile is your first step. If your profile was not appealing, it's not going to go to the next step. So you missed your chance, right? And so that is something that you should really think about. What does the audience want to know, or what should they know, versus what you want to tell? Any questions? Because I'm going to now switch to some CV samples. But before that, let me see if you have any questions.
No, so are
Okay.
you saying that
So what matters to an
are you saying certain things in the CV matter, you know, grab the attention of the hiring manager?
Yes, yes. And I'm going to get into that in just a few slides, Vivek. So yeah, thank you for the question. Just hold your thought on that. So what matters to employees? So hopefully this will start addressing your question. You know, the employer wants to know the basics. Do you have the education and training? You know, in most cases, that is not, a big question. You know, you all have very, very good backgrounds, solid education and training and certification and so on. Do you have the skills to do the task? And a lot of, there's always going to be a lot of skills in the CV. I will say there is a lot of skill inflation that happens. What we've seen is a CV typically has at least anywhere from 30 to 50% skill inflation. And what I mean by skill inflation is, you put a skill if you have, and when I say you, naturally it's not you, but a candidate may put a skill if they had even had a cursory exposure. But then when it comes down to experiences, you don't see that skill being utilized in any of the experiences. A common example is the cloud. If you've just operated in a cloud, that's one thing. But managing a cloud environment with all the infrastructure, the setup and other things, it's a whole different set of skills. And we see that a lot of times there is claim of cloud skills when they've really just operated in a cloud environment, just like any other server. Have you learned and applied new skills on the job? So now it's getting to where you can start differentiating yourself. It's not just the skills that you acquired, but how did you apply? And did you learn any new skills on the job? How effectively can you solve a problem? This is, I would say, very few CVs can actually, just by reading the CVs, you can actually judge this. So this question is I would say, one of the least answered questions in a CV. What is your approach to overcoming challenges? Now, this I understand is more of an interview question, but the more you can talk about, even in any project, you would have challenges. If there was a project which faced no challenges, then it really wasn't a project. It was, it may have been just a very routine task, which then kind of conveys, you are not operating in a complicated zone. Are you an individual performer or a team player? It's important to convey that if you're part of a team, how did you help, bring the team contribution to a level? If you had that opportunity, if you didn't, that's perfectly fine. But you should be able to convey your ability to perform in an individual capacity as well as in a team. Can you deliver results on time? This is again something that you rarely see in a CV. The result orientation of a candidate is extremely important and one of the least addressed topics in a CV. And what is the quality of your results? So naturally, if you delivered the results, let's say you were working on a client project, what was the feedback from the client? If the feedback was good, naturally, you want to talk about it. If the feedback was constructive, then at least you should be able to reflect that in some way, that, upon feedback, we did some few iterations and we got this to where they wanted it to be, something like that. So these are, again, you will see some of these are very natural questions, but others are not something that a typical candidate would address in their CV. And I'm going to bring a concept here. We all hear about career progression, right? And the career ladder. I'm going to convey ladder to have a very specific meaning, in the context of how you view every experience and how you can use this concept to capture your experience in a CV, and then even to communicate as you interact with interviewers and with others. And ladder is essentially an acronym in this concept to learn, apply, develop, or delegate. Right? If you're an individual, you may not have the chance to delegate, but if you're working in a team, maybe this is part of your team approach. How do you deal with challenges? Evaluate progress. This is an important one because it's not just doing, but how well were you doing and how did you measure how you were progressing? And then reporting the results, refining it, revising it. No first attempt is going to be perfect. Everybody recognizes if it was a perfect first attempt, then again it was not something challenging enough. But how you refine and revise that is an important piece. And how can you apply this concept of a ladder to your CV? So this is a bit philosophical, but a CV gives you a very good opportunity to present your storybook. This is the story of your professional life, right? Think of each experience as a chapter in the book. A book has a totality, but every chapter can be read on its own. And so think about your chapter should be engaging enough that if they didn't read any other chapter, that chapter itself can speak something about you. And those experiences give you an opportunity to describe something special about yourself. Again, the idea here is to make it impactful, interesting, and those experiences can be formulated into some of these questions. And I'll show you how it links to the concept of a ladder in just a minute. The questions you could ask when you're thinking about every experience is, what was the goal or the problem that was being solved, and what was the solution, right? Very intuitive. What skills did you apply to develop the solution? So again, the focus here is not just the skills you have, but the skills you are able to apply. It's a different thought process. What challenges did you face, and how did you deal with them? And how did you evaluate progress, and what were the final results? So this is kind of that linkage to the concept of the ladder. So the point here is every experience can be thought through by answering these questions, and hopefully you can then put it into your CV in a way that makes it a lot more interesting than I did ABC and then XYZ. Okay, so now let me stop again and see if there are any questions. Okay, so these are some sample CVs. Again, these are not meant to, these are de-identified because we will never talk about, but these are real CVs. So what one clear observation, if you look at this is too wordy. it doesn't have the messages in it. You just have to read through, and believe me, nobody's going to read through every bullet in this.
But I'm thinking that it will put off a recruiter immediately because it's too much to read. It's very hard to read.
Well, yes, one is that it's too read, and there is no, messaging format. Because, and you will see as we go through some other series about how a messaging format can make this better, right? But the other thing is, we see a lot of CVs carry these different formats with one column on one side of the page, which will have a lot of information. If projects are a key aspect of your experience, please do not put this in a sidebar, because a sidebar is a sidebar, right? The intent of a sidebar is something, which does not require the same level of attention. And a project is probably one of the most important things in your experience. The other thing is most CVs now get parsed through automated tools. And if you have too much of this formatting, you will lose on some of the content not getting parsed through appropriately. So the simpler your CV format is in terms of content parsing, the higher is the chance that your content will actually make it into a review. This is another sample CV, and this is a fairly senior. This is an experienced person, somewhat close to 10 years. The structure is better. You can see, it's not overwhelming with a lot of content, in one list of bullets. It's more concise, but the latter approach is missing. And what I mean by that is, how the application was done, and some of the other things about the challenges, the results, they are not there. And generally what would happen is this will again be seen as okay. These are you can see that there is a highlight on the skills. So the skills are generally mentioned in another section of the CV. So all they are trying to do is draw attention to what skills I have. But that's not enough. Skills are necessary for any review of a candidate profile, but they are not sufficient. So this one it clearly misses the latter approach. This is another sample CV. Better structure, because now you can start seeing they're giving you a nice structure: the client, the project, the technologies, the role, and then there is a project description which conveys. I mean, it's kind of an embedded, just a few words, which conveys the key goal: to improve the app, to provide new functionality. Right? That's your key goal. It's stated, but it's not stated in a very obvious way. You have to read through. Ideally, I would have preferred goal: improve the app with new functionality. In the new functionality, you could describe what functionality was intended to be added. But at least this is going in the right direction. You have a lot of responsibilities. Now, this is something we see a lot again in CVs. There are some obvious statements that, you use SQL to load data. Now, and I'm not a technical expert, but there is no insight. And I'm just using this as an example. There's no insight about, your work. It's like saying I did analysis in Excel, right? I mean, that's that's good if you're in high school, but not at this level of experience. And the other thing that is missing here is you stated the goal to improve the app, but nowhere in your description is it stated that on how the app was improved or any outcomes. Remember the R part of the ladder, the results. So, it's heading in the right direction, but it still has several gaps. This is a better CV, a lot more concise. You can start seeing now, the extent of the description is coming down, but that doesn't mean the impact is going to be less. It says the major objective of the proposition is to improve the performance of the data and, as data migrating, and right? You've described it. Again, it's a good format, but outcomes are not there. Challenges faced are not there. How you applied your skills, you could have, done a little more justice to that. So moving in the right direction, results are missing. This is a fairly senior level person. I would say, in terms of the presentation, the format is still too dense here, because it doesn't, compared to this structure, this is a lot easier to read. This structure is a lot more dense. What I suspect is because the person has so many years of experience that they were trying to put this into, into 1 or 2 pages. But the part that they have done well is they use, a CV is your limited real estate. It's like going into a shop, how you put the different items within a shop could drive your sales, more or less, right? And so your CV is your personal shop. And he has used this part to summarize the role, function, size of the team. He's been an architect, a project manager, engineering, data science, and his team size has gone from 0 to a few hundreds. Frankly, I would have put that into maybe a few, more discrete sections. But again, their intent was probably to compress a lot of information. This is very results oriented. So if you had to look at an example of what would catch attention, and I always, I say,
no, but the font is still too small, no?
I agree. That's why I was saying this is dense, because he or she is trying to package this into 1 or 2 pages. So they made the font sizes. Plus, in trying to put this into a PowerPoint, it has gone shrunk even more. Because I try to, naturally, to de-identify, I could only pick a certain section and then put it into a slide. But if you look at, even with the small font size, the results are very clear. Cut cost 10%, given the base number. Cloud, 5%. If there is beyond, your GPA, if there's any other number in the CV, it has probably a 5 times higher chance of being than somebody's reading it versus pure text. So, so just, hopefully that's a key takeaway when you think about communicating your story. And something that we are still not seeing in a, how should I say, as commonly as I would like. A GitHub profile is a very important aspect of a CV of a tech professional. It would not be important for somebody in a different field, but for tech professionals, GitHub profile is an important link to provide. We're still not seeing, I would say only 10% of the CVs that we come across have a GitHub profile link. I would almost say if you're a developer of any form, it's almost a must-have. And the reason is this demonstrates, your philosophy about learning, especially if you've done, if you've posted in public repositories. And it must be more than just, if you did a course project and you posted it, that's acceptable to get you started. That's acceptable if you're a student and if you're looking for an internship. But if you're a working professional, which I'm assuming most of the people in this forum are, it would have to be something more substantive than just a course project. And it gives you an opportunity to highlight that if you contributed to any open source projects, or if you started something and somebody else contributed, that's building on the body of knowledge. I would almost go to the extent of saying that if I had a top tier, a candidate from a top tier university, in India, these are the IITs, the NITs, with zero GitHub posts versus somebody who is from, let's say, tier 2, but is a lot more active on GitHub, I would go with, the more active on GitHub as a preferred candidate. Because he or she is demonstrating an ongoing learning mindset. Another thing that GitHub can do is if you don't have enough experience, GitHub can be your tool to demonstrate that even though you didn't get a chance to have a lot of real world experience, your curiosity is driving you to do all of these other things. And this, naturally, if it's a public repo, it can be shared with everyone. If it is a private, which you're doing for code management for your organization, naturally you cannot share it, but you can talk about it. And so this gives you another tool in showing who you are as a professional.
There was a question. For experienced folks, do we mention all experience or last 3 jobs only, or last one we can combine as one? Because let's say I've been doing 10 projects, 8 projects in my lifetime. Should I show all of them, or I should show the most prominent ones only? And let's say I change jobs 5 times, 7 times, then?
Yeah. So good question. So I would say, you should definitely put all the jobs you have done, right? You can choose to elaborate your experiences only, let's say, in the jobs in the last 5 years. Let's say you were in the 10 to 15 year experience bracket, and it also depends on the job profile you're applying for. If the job profile is something where your last 5 years experience is most relevant, then you can just elaborate on those, but not do give the full disclosure of all of the other jobs, but you don't need to elaborate on every experience in the other ones. Sometimes a job may need a skill that you have used, many years ago, and you may want to highlight that, and then you would naturally need to show how you've stayed current with those skills. But that could be an area. But otherwise, you can de-emphasize the previous one, but don't hide them. do provide the disclosure, because that way we will know if you graduated 15 years ago and you only show 5 years of experience, then it naturally brings the question mark of what happens to the other 10 years. Any other questions?
So friends, we can ask questions by speaking as well, or you can put your questions in the chat. Hani, you have a question? Go for it.
Yes, I wanted to ask that for PhD like scholars who are building their profile into tech field. So if they, what should be the priority? Should be the priority of projects that they should put forward in the CV, or the publication that they should put forward into CV? And also for the GitHub, most of the time they are bound that if you are working under IIT system, you cannot put public like disclosure in your GitHub profile. So most of the time they are in the private format. So does it affect like your selection?
So let me take this one at a time. If you're a PhD, surely your research, your excellence in research is a key measure. So publications, absolutely, you should put it. I would say in the publications, give some metric of how often was your publication cited, if that's available.
Okay.
You should also surely mention the projects you've done. Even if they were as a postgraduate student, mention that. Again, you can make a call based on the relevance, right? If it was not relevant to the job you're applying, you can just state that that was one experience you have. If it is relevant, you can elaborate. And then on your GitHub, yes, I mean, if your organization does not allow public posts, that's perfectly understandable. You can state that these are the projects and they are available in the private repos, so you cannot talk about it. But at the same time, if you have some public projects, it always helps to convey. I like to think of we all like to think about lifelong learners, but we need to show that in something more than a statement. And GitHub is probably one of the best ways. I think it's one of the most powerful ways right now for tech professionals to show their lifelong learning mindset.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Sorry, I cannot see the name, so I may not call out your name.
No problem. So, I have been working in IT since last 8-9 years. But yeah, I couldn't start up with my GitHub profile, mostly because I have been working in organizations and I didn't pay attention to how to build a personal profile. So, as someone who is maybe starting, what do you recommend to start up with? Like, I have done some very small code snippets, but not any project. So, what are your recommendations for that?
I would say if you can pick an area where you can, in an open source field, where you can contribute. So you don't need to start a new project, but if there is some contribution you can do to an existing open source forum, right? It will have to go through the review and vetting process, because the repo owners will have some mechanism to review, but that could be one way to get started. There are a lot of, at least the space, and I know is in these libraries. There are so many, hundreds, if not thousands of libraries now, which are handled through open source contributions, and you can pick one area and get deep into it and make a contribution.
Okay, got it.
Does that
Thanks.
help?
No,
Yeah.
so I didn't get this part. So let's say we haven't developed a GitHub profile so far.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to damage our job prospects. So should we
Well,
start now if we have not started yet?
I would say I wouldn't use the word damage, but it would definitely enhance your job prospects if you have a GitHub profile. And especially for higher end roles. In fact, I see now some job profiles ask for community contributions that you may have done in the space. And getting a paper out is a very long and complex exercise. The postgraduate students, they do it well. They are required to do, but something like GitHub gives you a way to get involved in the academic community.
I get a couple of calls each week, and from mid-management professionals. So they are facing a classic quagmire, and this has been happening since many, many years. I am seeing that they've become managers or first level leads or second senior managers, and now they are thinking that career has hit a wall and they have to go back to being tech. But trying to being tech again after many years of not doing tech is so hard, right? So, and all these new things have come. So these development managers have been managing developer teams, but when they have to look for job themselves, they really need those hands-on skills which they no longer have. They haven't even tried in years, so because the team was doing it. So how are these mid-management professionals, are they supposed to start coding again? I mean, because functional or management skills are clearly not helping them get jobs or grow fast, and all these new technologies are there which they don't know. So what should a manager level person do? This question has been foxing so many, and even I try to counsel these people, but I don't have a very clear, strategy for them. What should a mid-level manager do? They are no longer hands-on, but without hands-on, they are out of touch with these new technologies and they don't qualify in interviews. Are they supposed to go back
Yeah,
to school and learn, technical hands-on Python notebooks again? What they're supposed to do?
yeah. No, it's a very natural situation that many in this, what I call as middle management space, are dealing with. Uh, I would say if you truly want to keep yourself current, um, the first ingredient is curiosity. And with so much around you available now, this is not the same as when we were students, which is in the pre-internet era, when you did not have access to information, but with so much around you, your ability to whet your curiosity appetite is only limited by how strong of an appetite you have. And if it doesn't have to be code writing, but even just exploring and participating in the, let's say, I know this forum is mostly all AI, but participating in this forum and just understanding what is going on will help you to get more current. It doesn't require code writing. In fact, I mean, there is an argument being made, and I don't know if it's a valid one or not, is, um, just basic coding skills can be automated, right? But it's the solution orientation or it's the application part which at least, I believe it's not at the risk of getting automated, because that requires creative thinking. Creative thinking does, human side of creative thinking is purely driven by curiosity, right? And it's not restricted by a model. Remember, again, I'm not the expert in anything to do with AI, but the predictions are, as I understand, bound by the data that's used to feed it, right? Well, in your case, your imagination, your curiosity is unbounded. So, use that to your advantage. I know this sounds more philosophical, but at the core, I truly believe it is curiosity.
So I am hearing that basically we have to still have solutioning skills and be curious enough to attend all these forums to be aware of the latest things going around, right? So even as first level or second level managers or tech leads who are no longer coding, they still need to be aware of the latest things going on, at least from these forums or reading papers, blogs, and still have the solutioning skills to do the new kind of solutions, even though they may not be direct coders. So that's what I heard from you. Yeah.
I'll give you a simple example, and this is coming from someone who's not a tech expert. NVIDIA obviously is is now the global poster child for AI. When NVIDIA got started, they were focused purely, the whole terminology of GPU is for gaming, right? And until about a year or year and a half ago, NVIDIA was known purely for its gaming and its ability to pivot to, not pivot, but essentially play into the AI space. What enabled it, and why was it better positioned to do it versus many other chip companies, right? Again, I don't know the why, but that's a curiosity question. I'm sure that if you spend just a few hours, you will know a lot more about it than what you did, a few hours back. Go ahead. We have a few more minutes.
So yeah, friends, let's ask any questions we might have on careers and tech upskilling and so forth. This is a good forum to discuss our career inquiries. With the layoffs and all, particularly in the Western markets, the situation is not very good for job market. So it is important that we work as a community and sort of get some career counseling and support in what areas we need to skill and how do we skill, what skills are needed, right? So if we are a fresher, because I read a report saying that 80% plus of engineering graduates from India are not going to get full employment, which is at par with their engineering degree. 80% of folks either won't get jobs in engineering or will be underemployed. So it's looking quite drastic. And this is happening when companies are making record profits, right? So you saw the quarterly results of Microsoft, Nvidia, and others. And I was just talking to somebody in Bay Area earlier this morning, and it is Friday night in Bay Area, and they are saying that it's very dire. And all the companies, in spite of record profits, they are just laying off in hordes. And there are folks in Bay Area, who are not able to get placed. And so we have to work as a community and see how we can upskill ourselves or find the right connections, how to make these resumes properly so we get the attention we need in the next interview rounds. So ask your questions here. This is a good forum for this kind of discussion.
Hi, my name is Mayurakshi De. My question is that I have been working in legacy systems, mainframes, for the past 11 years. So, what is the best way to transition to more newer technologies, and what approach should I take?
Okay. So I believe legacy systems are still the mainstay of many applications. So it's not something that will become obsolete, but what you can do, the trend is obviously everything going to the cloud. And what you could consider is if you can upskill or add to your skills with, let's say a migration kind of exercise. If this, if your application were to go from on-prem to cloud, what are the things you would need to know? And that way, it's a natural extension. You were in the legacy system mainframes, I'm assuming, and now you have the ability to handle cloud projects, right? So that brings you into a lot more current space. That's at least one area I can think of, but I'm sure there might be others too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the advice.
Welcome.
I'll offer my 2 cents here. So I feel that, in technological kind of careers or engineering careers at large, lifelong upskilling is sort of a given. So the opportunity in engineering careers is high compared to many other fields which may find it more difficult maybe. But the problem is one has to upskill and reinvent oneself couple of times in one's lifetime career. And when you were hot in Java, but then Java became commodity, right? And then you learn mobile apps, and then mobile apps became a commodity. So this cycle goes on and on. Currently is the time of AI in data science, but eventually it will commoditize as well, and these tools will automate most of the programming, lot of the design work as well. So there's always the next thing. So we have to constantly reinvent ourselves in the new technological stack. That's just the nature of this business. And there are a lot of online courses and these kind of communities like the one we run in Cellstrat, which allow us to upskill, right? So we have to keep learning. Neither of us can survive professionally if we don't constantly reinvent ourselves.
Hey, this is Veeresh here. Okay, I had a question. How is the trend towards quantum computing is growing with respect to careers right now? So that people, if they want, they can actually prepare right. I mean, from this time itself, we know it's a time for AI, ML, and generative AI kind of stuff. That's the season going on. But I believe what they were thinking was next best was quantum computing. I mean, is it really that hype? Any idea?
So I don't know about quantum computing, as a technology area. What we know is based on requirements we see from clients, and at this point, I don't see, frankly, any requirements which require that specific skills. Now, it may be because we don't operate in that space. It's clearly more in the research domain, from what I understand. And I want to just connect this to the earlier topic of the why, right? Yes, there is this thinking about what is the flavor of the day, but the core question one has to ask is why, right? Why is AI beginning to take off now? When and it's a combination of factors. It's a combination of data getting to a size which is makes it more effective, computing power getting to a capability that makes that feasible, and people's people's need to, that will always be there, to find something more efficient. In any technology, if these things come together around the same time, you could see, you could see a breakout. You see another area where such a breakout is happening is in electric vehicles. We may not see that as much in India, but in countries like China and EU, EVs are now almost 20 to 25% of all new car sales. And think about, the disruption. Think about the mechanic who has been trained his entire life to work on, normal internal combustion engines. He has a shop and he doesn't know anything about EVs, but the mechanics are very good in self-learning. I remember there was a time when cars were moving from a normal injection system to a fuel injector based delivery, and they adapted, and so they're going to face some very significant disruption, and they're learning to adapt to that. So the point I'm making here is this can happen in any space. You just need to have that learning mindset.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. Yeah, Dinesh here. So actually, I'm currently a backend developer with around 4 years experience. So, and I got admission from the Georgia Tech in US for masters in computer science. So my question was like, considering the current challenging job market, so do you see, is it worthwhile to pursue computer science in US? I mean, would it be a sensible decision for, I mean, a backend developer like me who has already 4 years experience in India, or I should rather focus on upskilling myself in AI domain and then switch jobs here itself in India? I mean, given that how software engineering roles will, I mean, I'm not sure if they will remain prominent in future as of now.
So, this is a very individual call. I would, my ability to guide would be purely in terms of my own perspective. But again, if you keep the lifelong learning mindset, then a graduate program presents a very good learning opportunity. Whether it's in India or the US, that's another call to be made. But to me, if it fits in your overall profile, pursuing a postgraduate coursework, gives you a very good learning opportunity, which is somewhat unburdened by, if you were to do this in a job, you're going to be constantly bound by the parameters of the job. So that's just my philosophy, but others may have a different thinking around it.
Okay, and how do you see the, I mean, the role of, I mean, general software engineering roles in future?
I mean, that's software engineering is not going to go away. I think anybody would agree to that. You just have to be in the right space. The people, if you look at the profile of people who are in OpenAI, who work in OpenAI, they were, until 5 years ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, nobody had heard about them, but they are mostly all graduate students who come from, very good programs with naturally a connection to AI, right? Whether it's in Toronto, whether it's in EU. So they are all, many of them are graduate students. In fact, when this whole fiasco about Sam Altman being thrown off the CEO role, the person who was chosen as his successor, she is a very accomplished postgraduate I forget which university she's from. So, the right talent will find the right place. There's no question about that. It's hard to try to project which line will have the better job prospects. But if you're good in what you do, you will find the opportunities.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, we are out of time, and thank you all. If you have any question, you can channel it to Vivek, and would be happy to respond. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Sunil, you can write your number and LinkedIn profile maybe in the Google chat here for audience to be able to reach out to you. I've already shared my number, but you can share your number as well.
Okay, I'm going to send my email, and I would prefer email communications. So I'm just sending that, and anybody can reach out to me on this.
Okay, interesting webinar. Any final comments or questions, folks? Okay, thanks, Sunil.
Okay,
nice presentation. Interesting career
Thank you.
advice. Thank you for that. Thank you, audience,
Thank
for
you
joining.
all thank you for participating.